Imagine this, a tapestry of human history, vast and intricate, yet with entire sections seemingly missing, faded into obscurity. We often define civilization by certain markers: settled agriculture, the rise of complex societal structures, the invention of writing. These are the familiar milestones, the bedrock of our understanding, shaping how we perceive the past. But here's the thing: what if a significant portion of that tapestry existed before these recognized threads were even woven? What if there were an era, a profound chapter in the human story that predates everything we commonly accept as the dawn of civilization? The very concept sends a shiver down the spine of conventional history, challenging deeply held assumptions about progress and development. Look at your arm right now. Consider the millions of years of evolution that led to its form, and then think about the comparatively brief span of documented history. This isn't just a philosophical musing, it's about unsettling the comfortable narrative we've built for ourselves. What if before the first city walls rose, before the first plough broke the earth, before the first cuneiform tablet was pressed, humanity navigated a world with a depth of understanding and a way of being that we have largely forgotten? It's a tantalizing question, one that beckons us into the shadowy realms of prehistory. The archaeological record shows us glimpses, enigmatic artifacts, and inexplicable alignments that defy easy categorization. But the most intriguing clues might not be buried in the earth. They might be preserved in the fragile, often dismissed wisdom of ancient traditions. Cultures around the globe, particularly those that maintained a deep connection to their ancestral lands and oral histories, whisper tales of a time far more ancient than our textbooks allow. These aren't just quaint stories. They are intricate narratives, often dismissed as myth, yet imbued with a profound resonance that speaks to a collective human memory stretching back across millennia. Could these ancient cultures possess unique insights, faint echoes of lived experience from an era that modern scholarship struggles to comprehend? Think about that for a moment. What if their stories, their sacred sites, their very ways of life are remnants of a truly lost time, a period when humanity interacted with the world in ways we can barely conceive today? This isn't just about uncovering new facts. It's about reevaluating the very framework through which we understand our own past, our origins, and perhaps our future. We're embarking on a journey to explore the whispers of a lost time, an era before civilization as we know it, remembered only by those who lived closest to the earth and cherished their ancestral traditions. But here's the thing you might not realize: a significant percentage of people who watch historical content never stop to consider the foundational definitions that underpin those narratives. So, if you're curious about challenging those definitions and exploring the true depths of human history, hit that like button, subscribe, and let's unravel this mystery together. The journey into humanity's deepest past begins not with cities or writing, but with the very spark of consciousness that set us apart. We often trace our lineage back through a long, winding path of hominid evolution, from our earliest bipedal ancestors to the emergence of Homo sapiens, anatomically modern humans, roughly 300,000 years ago. This was a pivotal moment, a cognitive leap that allowed for symbolic thought, complex communication, and the capacity for abstract reasoning. Imagine waking up in a world untamed, vast, and teeming with life, your very survival dependent on your wits, your adaptability, and your connection to the natural world. This was the reality for our early human ancestors, who lived not in permanent settlements, but as nomadic hunter-gatherers. Their lives were intrinsically intertwined with the rhythms of nature, following animal migrations, gathering seasonal fruits and roots, and adapting to ever-changing environments. Their social structures, while seemingly simple from a modern perspective, were incredibly sophisticated, built on cooperation, egalitarian principles, and a deep understanding of kinship. Hunter-gatherer societies were typically small, fluid bands, where every member played a vital role. Tools, often crafted from stone, bone, or wood, were not commodities but extensions of their very being, essential for hunting, gathering, and crafting shelters. Their knowledge of their environment was encyclopedic, a living database passed down through generations, identifying edible plants, tracking animal behavior, and understanding the subtle cues of weather patterns. This wasn't merely survival. It was a profound way of life, characterized by an intimate reciprocity with the land that sustained them. The archaeological record shows us hints of this intricate relationship through early cave paintings, depicting hunting scenes and animal forms with astonishing detail and spiritual significance. But here's where it gets really interesting: the preservation of knowledge in these pre-literate societies. Without written language, how did they pass down their accumulated wisdom, their understanding of the world, their moral codes, and their history? The answer lies in the power of oral traditions and rudimentary forms of storytelling. Elders were the living libraries, repositories of generations of accumulated knowledge. Stories, myths, songs, and dances served as mnemonic devices, embedding vital information about hunting techniques, spiritual beliefs, and social norms into the collective consciousness. Consider the intricate lore surrounding Australian Aboriginal songlines, which are not just songs, but detailed maps of their ancestral lands, recounting creation stories, journeys, and ecological knowledge. These aren't just entertaining tales, they are the very fabric of their culture, a highly sophisticated system for preserving and transmitting information across vast stretches of time. Think about that for a moment. An entire civilization existing without a single written word, yet possessing a rich, detailed understanding of their world. How much nuance, how much depth could be conveyed through these spoken and performed traditions? This brings us to a crucial point. These oral histories likely contained echoes, fragments, and stylized memories of even older times, periods that predate even the established hunter-gatherer lifestyle, potentially moments of profound environmental shifts or interactions with other hominid groups. The question isn't just about what they remembered, but how those memories were shaped and preserved over countless generations, becoming the very foundation of their worldview. And what if these deep memories hold clues to humanity's earliest spiritual and intellectual stirrings? Moving deeper into the layers of human memory, we encounter a fascinating phenomenon: the way ancient cultures, especially those with robust oral traditions, wove memories of a pre-agrarian past into their foundational myths and legends. These aren't just fanciful stories, they often serve as cultural repositories, carrying echoes of historical events, environmental changes, or societal reorganizations, albeit in a symbolic and often poetic language. Imagine a time when the world was vastly different, when human existence was simpler, or perhaps more attuned to the Earth's rhythms. These myths frequently describe such an era. Think about the dreaming of Aboriginal Australians, an intricate spiritual framework that speaks of ancestral beings who shaped the land, laid down the laws, and inaugurated the very patterns of life. It's a continuum that links past, present, and future, a time when the physical and spiritual realms were inextricably intertwined. This isn't just a bygone era, it's an ever-present dimension of their reality. Many Native American creation stories also speak of a time before, or of transformations that occurred before the current human way of life became established. Narratives often feature shape-shifting figures, animal ancestors, and a direct engagement with the forces of nature in ways that resonate with a hunter-gatherer existence, rather than a settled agricultural one. These stories often depict a harmonious coexistence with nature, a deep respect for all living things, and a world where boundaries between species and states of being were more fluid. This speaks to a fundamentally different relationship with the environment than that fostered by large-scale agriculture and urbanization. Interesting. The recurring motifs across diverse cultures. How do we explain the global prevalence of flood myths, for instance? From the Epic of Gilgamesh to indigenous accounts from every continent, Stories of great deluges that wiped out earlier worlds or civilizations are remarkably common. Could these be collective memories of real catastrophic events, perhaps melting ice sheets at the end of the last ice age, which fundamentally reshaped coastlines and habitats? Another recurring theme is the existence of beings who predated human civilization, often possessing immense wisdom or power, sometimes benevolent, sometimes fearsome. These figures might represent earlier human groups, or even metaphorical representations of natural forces. The function of myth, in this context, is profound. It's not about literal factual accuracy in the modern scientific sense, but about conveying truth through narrative, emotion, and symbolism. Myth serves as a repository of collective memory, a means of transmitting complex ideas and generational experiences in a memorable and meaningful way. It acts as a powerful educational tool, teaching moral lessons, explaining natural phenomena, and preserving the deep historical consciousness of a people. While heavily symbolic, these tales often contain kernels of genuine historical or environmental recollection, filtered through the cultural lens of successive generations. The challenge, of course, is in discerning these kernels from purely metaphorical narratives. But what if these stories are not merely fiction, but heavily encoded histories, detailing a different kind of human past, one where our relationship with the earth was fundamentally different? And what if, by dismissing them as mere fairy tales, we are overlooking vital clues to our collective heritage? This isn't just about understanding ancient beliefs, it's about recognizing the incredible sophistication of pre-literate societies in preserving their past. As we peel back the layers of memory, we discover that ancient peoples didn't just tell stories about the past, they inscribed it directly onto the land itself. Sacred landscapes and ancestral memory are inextricably linked, forming a living archive of earlier eras and ways of being. Imagine walking through a landscape where every hill, every rock formation, every river bend holds a story, a memory, a connection to those who walked before. Ancient cultures viewed their territories not as mere resources, but as living entities, imbued with spirit and history. These landscapes were active participants in their narratives, sacred sites acting as focal points for ceremony, remembrance, and the spiritual renewal that tied them to their origins. This deep identification with the land meant that the earth itself became a mnemonic device, a physical manifestation of their ancestral memory. Consider for a moment the monumental feats of engineering and communal effort represented by megalithic structures across the globe. Stonehenge in England, the standing stones of Karnak in Brittany, the countless dolmens and passage tombs found from Ireland to Korea. These incredible structures, often predating the advent of metal tools and large-scale agriculture, speak of a profound knowledge of astronomy, geometry, and engineering, coupled with an immense societal cohesion. What if these sites aren't just tombs or ceremonial spaces, but also monumental expressions of a pre-agricultural knowledge system, perhaps even markers of ancient celestial observations or sophisticated Earth energies? The alignment of many megalithic sites with solstices and equinoxes suggests a deep understanding of cosmic cycles, a knowledge that might have been crucial for hunter-gatherer societies tracking seasons and resources. This isn't just about building with big stones. It's about imprinting a worldview, a spiritual connection, and a scientific understanding onto the very fabric of the landscape. Indigenous spiritual practices globally continue to honor ancestors and past epochs with profound reverence. Think of the elaborate rituals performed at sacred sites, connecting present generations to the very first beings who shaped their world. These practices are not just quaint traditions. They are vital acts of remembrance, actively reenacting or recalling ancient journeys, migrations, and pivotal events. They serve to reinforce communal identity, ethical codes, and the continuity of knowledge. The belief that one's ancestors literally inhabit or guide from these landscapes imbues them with immense spiritual power and historical significance. When we look at the ancestral lands of many indigenous peoples, we find layers of memory, not just archaeological strata, but stories etched into the very topography. These places are not just locations, they are living repositories of knowledge, wisdom, and the enduring legacy of countless generations. But how much of this deep ecological and cosmological knowledge embedded in these landscapes goes unrecognized or undervalued by modern societies? What if these sites held clues not only to the spiritual beliefs of ancient peoples, but also to a deeper, more holistic understanding of our planet that we have since lost? And could these echoes of a profound connection to the Earth offer us guidance in our current ecological crises? This brings us to the tantalizing possibility that some forms of wisdom, some technologies of a different kind, might have been far more sophisticated than we give credit for in the pre-civilizational era. This brings us to a part of our exploration that strays into the realm of the truly intriguing, and sometimes the speculative. What if some ancient traditions hint at forms of knowledge, environmental understanding, or even technologies that predate our conventional understanding of civilizational advancements and were subsequently lost or misunderstood? This isn't about flying saucers or laser beams, but a different kind of sophistication. Consider the concept of ecological knowledge possessed by ancient hunter-gatherers. Their survival depended on an intimate, comprehensive understanding of their local ecosystems. They knew the patterns of flora and fauna, the subtle variations in climate, the medicinal properties of plants, and sustainable hunting and gathering practices, all passed down through generations. This was a technology of survival and stewardship far superior in its context to the intensive agriculture that followed, which often led to soil depletion and environmental degradation. They possessed a deep, localized wisdom that we, in our modern, globally connected world, are only just beginning to appreciate and rediscover. But here's where it gets really interesting and perhaps a bit controversial. There are persistent ancient narratives found across diverse cultures that speak of advanced pre-Diluvian civilizations or golden ages that ended in cataclysm. Think of Plato's account of Atlantis, or the extensive Vedic texts describing sophisticated societies with intricate spiritual and scientific knowledge that existed long before recorded history. While often dismissed as pure myth or philosophical allegory, the sheer consistency of these narratives begs a re-examination. What if these aren't literal accounts of futuristic technologies, but rather symbolic representations of a different kind of advanced society? Perhaps one that achieved a profound balance with nature, or possessed a detailed understanding of cosmic cycles and earth energies that we have since forgotten how to interpret. The challenge, of course, is immense. How do we differentiate between symbolic representation, which is the language of myth, and literal historical accounts, especially when dealing with traditions that span millennia and have undergone countless reinterpretations? The archaeological record sometimes throws up anomalies that fuel these speculations. Out-of-place artifacts, massive structures built with precision that seems to defy the known technological capabilities of their supposed builders, or complex astronomical alignments incorporated into ancient sites. While mainstream archaeology often seeks more conventional explanations, the persistent narratives within ancient cultures themselves offer an alternative lens. They suggest that humanity might have possessed certain forms of environmental understanding, social organization, or even spiritual technologies that reached peak development in eras long before the rise of our current civilization. And then there's the oral history, which sometimes speaks of interactions with beings or knowledge systems far removed from later human endeavors. 4. The consequences are profound. If we summarily dismiss these whispers as fantasy, we risk overlooking a crucial part of our own historical and intellectual inheritance. What if some of these lost technologies were not mechanical, but related to consciousness, healing, or harmonious living? And how do we even begin to understand what might have been lost when our very definition of technology is so narrowly focused on the material? This isn't just an academic exercise. It's about expanding our understanding of what human ingenuity and wisdom truly entail, throughout the vast expanse of our history. Ultimately, understanding these ancient memories, these echoes of a time before civilization, is not merely an academic exercise. It carries a profound significance for our present and our future. Neglecting these narratives, dismissing them as mere folklore or primitive superstition, severely limits our perspective on the full scope of human history. It creates a skewed view of our origins, suggesting a linear progression that may overlook intricate cycles of flourishing and decline, or alternative paths to wisdom and societal organization. This isn't just about what happened thousands of years ago, it's about recognizing the resilience, adaptability, and diverse expressions of human genius across time. One of the most critical aspects of this journey is the importance of respecting indigenous knowledge systems as valid forms of historical record. For too long, the oral traditions, sacred sites, and spiritual practices of indigenous peoples have been marginalized or viewed through a colonial lens, stripped of their historical and scientific validity. But these systems often contain meticulously preserved ecological knowledge, ancestral histories, and even cosmological understandings that have been sustained for millennia, far predating written records. They offer a living bridge to an older way of being, providing unique insights into human interaction with the environment, societal resilience, and even forms of governance that prioritized harmony over endless expansion. When we fail to recognize this, we lose irretrievable pieces of the human puzzle. Furthermore, understanding pre-civilizational eras can offer invaluable insights into sustainable living and human resilience. Our hunter-gatherer ancestors, for example, lived in remarkably sustainable ways, their societies often characterized by a profound reciprocity with nature that ensured long-term survival without depleting resources. Their technologies were often about adaptation, observation, and minimal impact, rather than control and exploitation. In an age grappling with unprecedented ecological crises, can we afford to ignore these ancient blueprints for harmonious coexistence? This isn't about romanticizing the past. It's about learning from diverse human experiences and extracting lessons that might be applicable to our modern challenges. This exploration, then, becomes a call to continue exploring and interpreting these ancient memories as more than just stories, but as fragments of a richer, more complete human story. It's about piecing together a mosaic where the missing sections are honored and investigated rather than simply ignored. It's about recognizing that our current understanding of human history, while vast, is incomplete, and that profound insights reside in the traditions and forgotten wisdom of those who came before us. By listening to the whispers of a lost time, by valuing the profound wisdom embedded in ancient cultures, we gain a deeper appreciation for our own origins, our potential for adaptability, and our enduring, intricate relationship with the planet we call home. What if the answers to some of our most pressing modern problems lie not in new inventions, but in rediscovering ancient ecological wisdom? And what if, by embracing these long-forgotten narratives, we can forge a more resilient and meaningful future? Imagine this: a human history far grander, far more complex than we currently acknowledge, stretching back not just thousands, but perhaps tens of thousands of years, with chapters and entire eras that have slipped from our collective consciousness. We began by asking what existed before civilization as we know it, and our journey has revealed tantalizing clues that are far more than mere whispers. We've explored the profound cognitive leap that set early humans apart, their deep connection to the earth, and the intricate oral traditions that served as living libraries, preserving memories across vast stretches of time. We've seen how myths and legends, often dismissed as fantasy, can act as encoded histories, echoing great floods, harmonious relationships with nature, or even previous golden ages. We've walked through sacred landscapes, recognizing them as physical manifestations of ancestral memory, imbued with knowledge of celestial cycles and ancient ways of being. And we've even cautiously considered the possibility of lost technologies, not of advanced machinery, but of sophisticated ecological understanding and profound spiritual wisdom that preceded later agricultural societies. This isn't just an academic exercise, it's a re-evaluation of humanity's true inheritance. It's about remembering that the history we learn in textbooks is but a recent snapshot in a much longer, more nuanced saga. The deeper we dig, the more we listen to the voices of the past, the more we realize that civilization itself is just one chapter, albeit a significant one, in the grand narrative of human existence. The era before it was not an empty void, but a rich, complex period that continues to speak to us through these ancient memories. If this journey into the truly ancient past has sparked your curiosity and made you question conventional narratives, let me know where you're watching from in the comments below. Your perspective adds another thread to this rich tapestry of human inquiry. And for more explorations into the mysteries of our past and the hidden corners of human knowledge, make sure you subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next deep dive into the unknown. Thank you for joining me on this incredible journey. But before we close this chapter, let's delve deeper into some of these threads we've uncovered, because the implications are truly breathtaking. We posited that early humans experienced a profound cognitive leap. This isn't just about making tools, but about the emergence of symbolic thought, true language, and the ability to project themselves into the past and future, what scientists call mental time travel. Imagine the world through their eyes. Every rock, every tree, every animal held not just physical properties, but a spirit, a story, a connection to the cosmic web. This wasn't primitive superstition. It was a sophisticated philosophy, an integrated worldview that saw no separation between the natural and the supernatural. They were not merely living in nature, but living as nature, understanding its rhythms with an intimacy that modern society has largely lost. Consider their deep connection to the Earth. We often hear about indigenous cosmologies speaking of Mother Earth. This isn't a mere poetic flourish. It's an operational principle. Their survival depended on an intricate knowledge of their environment, not just what to eat, but how to ensure its continued abundance. This meant understanding soil health before the concept of soil science existed, knowing animal migration patterns with an accuracy that rivals modern ecological data, and managing landscapes through controlled burns, sustainable harvesting, and even rudimentary forms of agriculture that didn't deplete resources but enhanced them. Take, for example, the concept of permaculture, a buzzword today, but a practice that has roots stretching back tens of thousands of years in various indigenous communities worldwide. They weren't just gathering food, they were cultivating ecosystems, albeit in ways that left little archaeological footprint compared to settled intensive agriculture. This cultivation was often more about nurturing the wild abundance rather than imposing human will upon it. They understood succession, synergy, and sustainability not as abstract theories, but as lived realities vital for their very existence. This ecological wisdom, passed down through generations, was perhaps one of the greatest technologies of the Stone Age, a technology of living in harmony with the planet, rather than dominating it. Within them, we talked about them as living libraries, and that's precisely what they were. Imagine libraries constructed not of stone or paper, but of human memory, honed and refined over millennia. Each story, each song, each ritual was a mnemonic device, a container for vast amounts of information, astronomical observations, genealogical histories, medicinal plant knowledge, ethical guidelines, migration routes, and warnings about natural disasters. The emphasis on rhythm, repetition, and performance in oral cultures wasn't just for entertainment. It was a highly effective system for preserving complex data. When we encounter myths of a great flood, for instance, we shouldn't dismiss them outright. Geologists have identified numerous periods of significant sea level rise and catastrophic flooding events across the globe, some within the time frame of early human habitation. These myths, then, are not just stories. They are geological records, encoded narratives of real, historical events, preserved through an unbroken chain of oral transmission. The details might be embellished, imbued with spiritual significance, but the core event often holds a kernel of truth. The challenge for us is to learn how to read these archives of the mind, to decipher their layers of meaning. This brings us to the nature of myth itself. Often relegated to the realm of fiction, myths, in an oral society, were far more than that. They were not a story. They were the story. They were history, science, philosophy, and religion, all rolled into one cosmic narrative. The Golden Age myths, prevalent in so many cultures, speak of a time of harmony, abundance, and direct communication with the divine. What if these aren't just wishful fantasies, but distorted memories of a period before the profound dislocations brought about by the agricultural revolution and the rise of complex hierarchies? A time when humans lived in smaller, egalitarian groups, deeply attuned to their environment, their needs met with relative ease by a bountiful natural world. This isn't to romanticize the hunter-gatherer existence, which was undeniably challenging, but to acknowledge that certain aspects of life, particularly social structures and ecological balance, may have been more harmonious than in many subsequent periods of human history. These myths could be a collective yearning for, or even a memory of, a different way of being that resonated deeply with the human spirit. And the sacred landscapes, these physical manifestations of ancestral memory, they are silent witnesses to a lineage far older than written history. Think of the monumental earthworks of Poverty Point in Louisiana, or the complex stone circles of Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, or the vast network of ley lines and spiritual sites crisscrossing ancient Britain and Ireland. These weren't built by simple, primitive people. They represent an astonishing level of organization, astronomical knowledge, and engineering prowess. But more than that, they were places where the veil between worlds was thin, where the ancestors communicated, where the cosmic order was observed and honored. They were often aligned with solstices, equinoxes, and stellar constellations, suggesting a profound understanding of celestial mechanics that predates formal astronomy. This wasn't merely practical knowledge for tracking seasons. It was deeply spiritual, integrating human life with the grand cycles of the cosmos. These sites are not just ruins. They are active monuments that continue to resonate with the energies and intentions of their builders, offering glimpses into a worldview that saw the entire Earth as a living, sacred entity. The idea of lost technologies needs further clarification. We're not talking about ancient alien spaceships or super-advanced gadgets, though some theories lean into those realms. What we're primarily referring to is a complex, sophisticated, integrated system of knowledge that encompassed ecology, spirituality, social organization, health, and a way of interacting with the world that was fundamentally different from the mechanistic, reductionist paradigm that has come to dominate modern thought. This technology was about connection, not control. It was about listening to the land, not extracting from it. It was about community, not individualism. For example, the precise knowledge of medicinal plants and healing practices found in many indigenous traditions is a technology that rivals modern pharmacology in its efficacy and understanding of the human body's interaction with natural compounds, often without the severe side effects. Or consider the memory palaces and other mnemonic techniques employed by oral cultures. These were powerful technologies for information storage and retrieval, far exceeding what many modern individuals can achieve without external aids. These weren't lost because they were deliberately hidden. They were lost because the paradigm shifted, because literacy and the written word, while offering immense advantages, also led to the atrophy of certain capacities and an attenuation of direct sensory and spiritual connection to the world. This re-evaluation of humanity's true inheritance is critical. The narrative of human progress, as often taught, is a linear one, from crude cave dwellers to sophisticated agriculturalists. then to the rise of civilizations, leading inevitably to modern industrial and technological societies. And while there's certainly a progress narrative within that, it often omits or deliberately downplays the incredible achievements and profound wisdom of the pre-civilizational era. It frames everything before settled agriculture as prehistory, implying a lack of meaningful development. But what if that prehistory was, in many ways, a sophisticated and sustainable epoch? What if the agricultural revolution, while providing surplus food and enabling larger populations, also came at a steep cost? Increased disease, social stratification, environmental degradation, and a severing of humanity's intimate bond with the natural world. This is not to say we should all return to hunting and gathering, but to understand that the path we have taken as a species is not the only path, nor necessarily the best path in all respects. The civilization we celebrate is indeed a complex and awe-inspiring achievement, but it's a relatively recent experiment in the grand timeline of human existence, spanning perhaps only 6,000 to 10,000 years. For more than 200,000 years before that, Homo sapiens navigated the Earth, adapted, evolved, and developed rich cultures and sophisticated knowledge systems that are only now beginning to be fully appreciated. The wisdom embedded in those ancient memories, those faint whispers from the past, holds profound relevance for our present and future challenges. As we grapple with ecological crises, social fragmentation, and a yearning for deeper meaning, perhaps the answers lie not only in pushing forward with more technology, but also in looking backward, in remembering what we have forgotten. What can we learn from cultures that lived in balance with their environment for tens of thousands of years? What insights can we gain from spiritual traditions that saw the sacred in every aspect of life, fostering a sense of reverence and interconnectedness? The very definition of progress itself comes into question. Is progress purely technological advancement and material accumulation? Or does it also encompass well-being, ecological harmony, spiritual depth, and social cohesion? The ancient memories we're exploring suggest that while we have gained much in terms of technological prowess, we may have lost something equally, if not more, valuable in terms of our collective wisdom and holistic understanding. This isn't about romanticizing the past. It's about recognizing its complexity and learning from its successes and failures. It's about developing a more complete and nuanced understanding of human potential. When we listen to these ancient voices, when we critically examine the archaeological evidence and indigenous narratives, we begin to reconstruct a much richer tapestry of human history than the one presented in many conventional accounts. We see patterns of resilience, innovation, and profound adaptation. We see societies that, despite their technological limitations, found ways to thrive in diverse environments, developing intricate social structures and profound spiritual lives. The implications for our understanding of human nature are equally profound, of knowledge and culture, than our own innate capacity for connection, for deep understanding, and for living in harmony with our environment might be far greater than we currently acknowledge. The idea that humans are inherently destructive or selfish is often touted, but perhaps this is a symptom of our current historical phase, rather than an inherent truth of our species. Perhaps deep within our collective memory lies the blueprint for a more balanced and sustainable existence, a blueprint we've simply forgotten how to read. The journey continues, and as we uncover more about these ancient paradigms, we're not just studying history, we're studying ourselves. We're unearthing the roots of our collective consciousness, understanding the foundations upon which all subsequent human experience has been built. And in doing so, we might just find the keys to navigating our future. So, when I ask you to consider these possibilities, it's not to offer definitive answers, but to invite a shift in perspective. To open your mind to the notion that the grand narrative of human history is still being written, and that many chapters remain undiscovered, or at least unread by the wider world. The true inheritance of humanity lies not just in the visible monuments and written texts, but in the echoes of memory, inscribed into the landscape, woven into mythical narratives, and preserved in the very fabric of indigenous thought. It's about shedding the ingrained biases that often lead us to dismiss anything that doesn't fit neatly into our modern scientific or historical frameworks. It's about appreciating different forms of knowing, different ways of experiencing reality. The world of our distant ancestors was one imbued with meaning, where every interaction, every observation held significance. They didn't see a forest. They saw a community of living beings, each with its own spirit and purpose, interconnected in a vast web. They didn't just see stars. They saw the movements of cosmic deities, the unfolding of destiny, the calendar of their lives written across the night sky. This holistic worldview, this deep sense of belonging and interconnectedness, is something that many in our fragmented modern world are actively seeking to reclaim. Could it be that the answers we're looking for, the sense of purpose and belonging that feels so elusive, have been whispering to us from the dawn of human consciousness? Could it be that the spiritual crises of our time are, in part, a collective amnesia, a forgetting of our true lineage and our profound connection to this living earth? The tools to rediscover this knowledge are all around us and within us. It's in the growing field of archaeoastronomy, which reveals the sophistication of ancient sky watchers. It's in ethnobotany, documenting the incredible plant knowledge of indigenous cultures. It's in the linguistic analysis of ancient languages, uncovering forgotten worldviews.